Well, thanks for being here. Have a seat, everyone. Well, thank you. Look, Lauren, thanks for that introduction and for sharing your story. Unfortunately, there are too many stories like yours all across America. Sadly, it's a familiar one to many Americans. People lay in bed at night, literally, staring at the ceiling, wondering what would happen if their spouse became seriously ill or got cancer. If a child gets sick, or if something happens to you, do you have enough insurance? Can you afford the medical bills? Will you have to sell the house? Will you have to get a mortgage? How in God's name are we going to pay for those prescriptions? Prescription drugs are so damn high. And you find out a big reason why you're lying awake at night and asking those questions is because Big Pharma is charging you exorbitant prices for the prescriptions you may badly need. Literally higher prices than anywhere in the world. That's not hyperbole, it's a fact, anywhere in the world. I've been fighting like others, Big Pharma, since I was a United States Senator. Back in the days when we were told they couldn't be touched, they had an exemption, basically. Unlike other parts of the healthcare system, Big Pharma got a special carve-out to prevent Medicare from negotiating prescription drug prices with them. They weren't allowed to do that. For years, advocates, like many of you here today, have worked tirelessly to change that and to give Medicare the power to lower prescription drug prices, just like the Department of Veterans Affairs is able to do for veterans. Same power. And it matters. It matters a lot. That's why one of the proudest things I've ever done was pass the Inflation Reduction Act. It allowed us to negotiate lower prices for prescription drugs. Not a single Republican voted for this, not one single Republican in the House or Senate voted, not one. But thanks to the Inflation Reduction Act, we finally beat Big Pharma, in no small part because of your delegation, not a joke. Because of partners like Senator Jeannie Shaheen, and I tell you what, she's got a special secret weapon. Billy, you want in the foxhole, man? You want Billy in that foxhole with you, man. And Maggie Hassan, Representative Annie Kuster, and especially Senator Bernie Sanders from Vermont. That's why we're here today, to talk about a law that Democrats passed and is lowering prescription drug prices. And I might add, and I'll explain in a moment, saving the taxpayers billions of dollars. Not just the individual recipients of the benefit, taxpayers. Americans pay more for prescription drugs, as has been pointed out by Bernie, than any other advanced nation in the world. I can take you to the airport and put you on Air Force One with me and take you to any pharmacy. All right, man. All right. I can take you to Toronto, Canada, Paris, France, Rome, Italy, Belgium. I can take you anywhere in the world, literally. And you'll pay half or less than you'd pay in America for the exact same drug made by the exact same pharmaceutical company. Same drug, same pharmaceutical company. But not anymore. With the help of Democrats in Congress, and Kamala, by the way, cast a tie-breaking vote to make sure that. Don't tell me one vote doesn't count. They told us, when I wrote this bill, they couldn't get it passed. We had a one-vote majority. I mean, that would never happen. But we stuck together. We finally got it done. And it was a hell of a fight. The pharmaceutical company, as Bernie referenced in another way, spent nearly $400 million. $400 million to defeat this single bill. $400 million. We beat the special interest, and we delivered to the American people. Because of this law, not only could Medicare finally negotiate lower prices, it also capped prescription drug costs for seniors total this year at $3,500 in 2024, and in the next 6 months. And by the way, in the first 6 months of this year alone, at out-of-pocket spending, we saved the people enrolled in Medicare nearly $1 billion in 6 months. $1 billion less out of your pocket nationwide in just the first 6 months. That means as of June, 1.5 million Americans who are enrolled in Medicare hit the cap and do not have to pay a dime more for drugs for the rest of the year, no matter what their costs are. And here, this bill is so extensive, people don't fully understand it. And guess what? Starting this January, the total cap on prescription drug costs for seniors on Medicare will be even lower. It'll go down to $2,000. Not have to pay more than $2,000, no matter what the cost of the drugs are, no matter what. For example, some of you unfortunately know, some of the cancer drugs can cost $10,000, $12,000, $15,000 a year. That's not hyperbole, that's a fact. This change is expected to save 19 million seniors and other people on Medicare, save them, just those ones on Medicare, $7.4 billion out-of-pocket spending starting in January. But here's the deal. It's also going to save the American taxpayers billions of dollars. I'll go into this in a little more detail, but the fact the bill we passed, extensive as it is, guess what? The American taxpayer is going to save $160 billion lowering the deficit. $160 billion. Because they no longer have, in Medicare, have to pay $400 instead of $35 for insulin, for example. But that's not all. Thanks to the law I signed for seniors are already saving on their prescription drug costs now. For example, take insulin to treat diabetes. 1 in 10 Americans has diabetes. I'm not going to ask you if you're the one, but I bet, how many of you know someone needs to take insulin for the diabetes? Raise your hand. So good cause. You know how much it costs to make that insulin? $10. T-E-N. And you know the guy who invented it, who discovered the prescription to do it? He made sure that he didn't patent it because he wanted it available for everyone. For everyone. That's what he did. That's what he did for everyone. But guess what? Now they charge as much as $400 a month. 3 years ago, I was down in Northern Virginia and doing a town hall, and I met a 13-year-old boy named Joshua. He and his dad both have type 1 diabetes, which means they need insulin every day. I spoke with Joshua's mom. Imagine what it's like to look at your child. I mean it sincerely. Think of this in personal terms. Imagine what it's like to look at your child who needs insulin, and you're looking and know you have no idea how you're going to pay for it. Not a joke. One woman in that meeting said, I have 2 children needed. I have to cut the prescription in half. And sometimes I have to choose which one gets the insulin. What does that do to a parent's dignity? Their sense of self-worth? Your ability to look your child in the eye. I mean this from the bottom of my heart. Look your child in the eye and say, honey, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Or imagine as a senior having to cut your pills in half to skip doses to forego your prescriptions altogether because you just can't afford it. Folks, this is the United States of America. So when we got elected, we were told we'd never get anything done. We had a 1-vote majority, and anyway, we'd never get anything big done. We got a hell of a lot big done. No, because of this group right here. Thanks to one of those laws, the Inflation Reduction Act, seniors with diabetes, as you've heard, now pay, and many of you know, $35 a month instead of $400 a month. That changes someone's life. Growing up in the family I grew up in, my dad used to have an expression. He said, Joey, I mean this sincerely, my word is abiding. Family's the beginning, the middle, and the end. And everyone is entitled to be treated with dignity. What's it do to a parent? What's it do to a parent? when you can't provide something you know your child or your spouse badly needs and there's no way you can pay for it. But Kamala and I wanted $35 insulin for everyone, not just seniors, for everybody. And she's going to get it done. Look, folks, they're still going to make a profit. They're still making 350% profit. It costs them $10 to make it. Think about that. We're taking on the cost of more than just insulin. Medicare, in the same bill, which people are only beginning to find out, understandably, because this bill is a bill that's passed, but it goes on for years. Medicare is now able to negotiate lower prices for some of the costliest drugs that treat everything from heart disease to arthritis to cancer. And here's what the law we've already passed has done for the first time ever. Every year from this point on, every year, calendar year, Medicare will negotiate the cost of additional prescription drugs. Earlier this year, I announced that Medicare reached an agreement with drug manufacturers on 10 new drugs that Medicare picked and said we're going to negotiate. The most common, most expensive drugs that treat everything from kidney disease to arthritis to blood cancers and more. These new low prices for all 10 drugs will go into effect in January 2026 and cut the prices on those 10 drugs by between 40 and 80%. The next year, Medicare will negotiate another lower price for 15 additional drugs. And every year thereafter, till we get after 20 drugs, until every drug is covered that's on the market. Every one. It's already passed. Folks, it isn't just saving seniors money. I said, it's also saving taxpayers billions of dollars because Medicare will no longer have to pay exorbitant prices to pharma. Over the next 10 years, just so far, the newer lower drug prices and other reforms, we've cut the federal deficit by $160 billion, while he raised it by $200 billion. I'm serious. Think about it. Look, I'm a capitalist. I was listed for 36 years as the poorest man in Congress, but I'm still a capitalist. You think I'm kidding? I got a phone call. I was campaigning for a colleague who was no longer around, but was up in this neck of the woods in Vermont, not Bernie, but his predecessor. And I got a phone call from my wife. She said, Joe. Oh, actually, I called home. When I'm away, I called to see how the kids are doing before she goes off to teach. I said, hey, Joe, how are you? Fine. You know you're in trouble when you get that answer. I give my words by the true story. He said, did you read today's paper? I said, honey, they don't have the Wilmington News Journal up here. She said, well, headline, Biden, poorest man in Congress. Is that true? I said, I don't know, but I guess I was for 36 years. I never thought I didn't have any money, but I had a good salary. Look, but I'm a capitalist. And without competition, it's not capitalism, it's exploitation. When Big Pharma doesn't play by the rules, competitors can't offer lower-priced drugs and devices to carry those drugs. So prices stay artificially high. And look, but we're taking action. For example, we called out drug companies that Bernie mentioned that make inhalers. So the people with asthma, and some severe asthma, I have asthma, but it's not severe, that they need to breathe. For charging Americans, and he was right, this is not an exaggeration, 70 times more than companies in Europe charge for the same exact prescription. It's outrageous. I think it borders on immoral. As a result, 3 of the largest companies, as I skillfully and very privately and peacefully call their CEOs to tell them, who make these inhalers are saying that instead of charging up to $600 out of pocket to cap the cost at $35, it's about time. But again, Bernie's the big reason why this is happening. You don't want to screw around with Bernie. But we have to do more. Bernie and I said this summer it's time for drug manufacturers to lower prices on anti-obesity medications. That you hear so much about these things. And by the way, it's not just cosmetically. It saves people's lives, these obesity medicines. It saves their lives because they're so overweight and there's so much problem associated with it. You just heard from Bernie about what these drug companies are doing. The prices of these anti-obesity drugs can be 6 times higher in America than in other countries, from Canada to Sweden. This is where I come from. It's called price gouging and corporate greed. And I know a little about corporations. There are more corporations incorporated in Delaware than every other state in the union combined. So I'm used to dealing with corporations. Americans don't like to be played for suckers. We don't like that, and we're tired of it. And it's outrageous. It's got to stop. Look, today's announcement follows actions we've already taken to reduce the health care costs for average Americans. Because of Bernie's leadership, we took action to reduce the cost of hearing aids for 1 million Americans by as much as $3,000. You see it on advertised on television. You go for the prescription drug, hearing aid, it's $3,060 or some whatever the number, over $3,000 bucks. You get the same hearing aid, and you get it for $3,000 less because you don't have to go to the prescription. You go right to the drug. You go to the drugstore right to the counter. In addition, my administration is banning junk health insurance. These guys are coming and going. There are plans for health insurance that look affordable, but then stick consumers with big unexpected charges. You know, we ended those unfair surprise medical bills. When I was, years ago, when I was in the Senate, I had 2 cranial aneurysms, and I was hospitalized for a long time. And you have what they call surprise medical bills. If the insurance you have doesn't cover a particular provider and not in network, they charge you significantly more. And so you get these surprise hospital bills. So hospitals that are in network can't send you a bill for out-of-network doctors who you didn't choose and are not part of you never consulted them. That's banned. I did that by executive order. Kamala and I are also protecting and expanding the Affordable Care Act. Today, there are 21 million Americans covered by the Affordable Care Act marketplace. That's 9 million more people, individuals, since I've been in office, that are now covered by the Affordable Care Act. More Americans have health care today than ever in American history. Today, than ever. And it's in part because I expanded tax credits that save an average of $800 per person per year, reducing health care premiums for millions of working families who have coverage under the Affordable Care Act. These enhancements expire next year, though. And I'm calling on Congress to make the expanded health care tax credits permanent. And Trump and his MAGA Republican friends want to cut the Affordable Care Act out completely. You know how many times they've introduced bills over the last 3 years to do that? 51 times. 51 times. Wants to replace the Affordable Care Act. You can't let that happen. Look, he wants to replace it with his, I love this guy. I'm trying to be a very good fellow. I'm not letting my Irish get the best of me. But my predecessor, the distinguished former president, he wants to replace the Affordable Care Act with that's what he refers to, a concept of a plan. I've heard that concept of a plan now for almost 8 years. A concept of a plan. What the hell is a concept of a? He has no concept of anything. No plan. If we don't elect Kamala and he gets elected, Trump can kick up to 45 million people off their health insurance. 45 million. Over 100 million people could lose health care coverage because they have a pre-existing condition. The only reason they could get it is because of the Affordable Care Act. Trump and MAGA Republicans want to eliminate the Inflation Reduction Act, which we're talking about, the big bill, which made all these savings possible, raising prescription drug prices again for millions of Americans. They're stated. They're not, and this guy means what he says. Means what he says. Look, during the last administration, my predecessor exploded the national debt. More than any previous president in a single term, this guy raised the national debt by $2 trillion because of the tax cut to overwhelmingly benefit the very wealthy and the biggest corporations. Now he's saying, if elected, remember what he said now, if elected, he wants another $5 trillion tax cut for the very wealthy. That's the tax cut he wants. He won't just get rid of the Department of Education, which he wants to do, and the Affordable Care Act. He'll gut Social Security and Medicare, which he says he wants to do. Hurt hardworking people. I got a better idea. Let's protect Social Security and Medicare. And finally start making the very wealthy pay their fair share to keep these programs in. I mean it. By the way, you know what the average tax rate is for a billionaire in America? There are 1,000 billionaires since COVID. 8.2%. Anybody want to change places with a billionaire's tax rate, raise your hand. I'm serious. Not a joke, 8.2%. I propose raising it to 25%, which isn't even close to the highest rate. You know how much that would raise? $500 billion over the next 5 years. Just paying 25%. Look, let me repeat what I've said since day one, and the Kamala's continue to commit to. We made a commitment that no one in America earning less than $400,000 a year, which is really high, will pay a single additional penny in federal taxes. Not a single penny. $400,000. They haven't and they won't. If Kamala's president, they will continue not to. So I don't want to hear this stuff about Biden going after the rich. I did that to make sure we understand what the super rich are paying. And folks, let me close with this. Bernie and I are going to have been doing this work for a long time. I know we both look like we're 40, but we're a little older. At least I am. I can't even say it anymore. Anyway, we know we've made historic progress in the last 3 years. $35 for insulin, $35 for inhaler, $2,000 a year cap, and things continue to go. We're showing how health care should be a right, not a privilege in America. That's why I've never been more optimistic about our future, and I mean it. We're at one of those inflection points, folks. The decisions we make in the next election are going to determine what this country looks like for the next 4 or 5 decades. And that's not hyperbole. That's a fact. And folks, I'm taking too much of your time, but let me say it this way. You just have to remember who the hell we are. We're the United States of America. We're the United States. There's nothing beyond our capacity. Not a damn thing's beyond our capacity. We're the only nation in the history of the world that's come out of every crisis stronger than when we went in. Every one. Because when we act together, there's nothing beyond our capacity. The rest of the world is looking to us. We have the strongest economy in the world. And now we just got to make sure it's available to every single American. So I leave you by saying, I can't tell you how much I appreciate what you're about to do in this election. As a friend of mine would say, from my lips to God's ears on that one. But look, you've got great candidates. You got great candidates. And I really mean, we got to get back to the days where we actually can talk to the other team. This is not your father's Republican Party. No, I mean, it's not even close. I came up in an era, I got elected when I was 29 years old at the United States Senate, had to wait 17 days to be able to be sworn in. I got there as a young civil rights guy, and when Strom Thurmond and all those guys are still there. But at least, be honest with God, you could talk to them. And people's change. After all those years served with Strom Thurmond on his deathbed, 100 years old, his wife called me from Walter Reed Hospital. She said, Joe, I said, yeah, Nancy. Well, she said, Strom asked me to come out. I'm at the nurse's station with the doctor, and she named his doctor. He asked me if you'd do him a favor. And I said, sure. He said, will you do his eulogy? I did Strom Thurmond's eulogy. I didn't lie. I started off and I said, Grandpa Finnegan, please forgive me for what I'm about to do. But all kidding aside, even by the time he left, he had the most racially diverse staff in America. He voted for a lot. He voted for the change in all the laws that he had voted for before. There was a headline, 1946, of Thurmond. Thurmond, hope of the South, because he was against separate but equal. Not the proposition you couldn't separate the races, but the proposition if you had separate equal, you had to spend the exact amount of money in a black school as a white school. My generic point is people change. But these guys just keep getting worse. No, I really mean it. They mean what they say. They mean what they say. I'll conclude by saying that, I'll just say something that's both revealing and self-defeating. There are only a few advantages of being the oldest guy around. That is, I have more experience in foreign policy than anybody ever had this job in American history. I've known every major world leader personally in the last 40 years. Every international meeting I attend, including just being in Germany, as we're walking out, whether it's the G20 or the G7, whatever it is, they'll pull me aside, one leader after another, quietly, and say, Joe, he can't win. My democracy is at stake. My democracy is at stake. If America walks away, who leads the world? Who? Name me a country. And we're doing it without expending American blood by having Americans in war. So, folks, there's so much at stake. So please, I know you'll all vote, but please call your neighbors, get your friends, get your relatives, get them to vote. Because this is the nation's democracy, in my view, depends on it. God bless you all, and may God protect our troops. Thank you.